Hey there, I'm Joe Weems. Before we get into the video, I want to remind you about ng-conf 2023 happening in Salt Lake City, Utah on June 14th and 15th. Head over to ng-conf.org to check out the speakers, check out the talks, and to get your ticket before they all sell out. We'll see you there.
Exciting to be back with y'all in person again. It's just not the same in Zoom, so I'm excited to see all your faces and hear all your fun Angular stories. But today, for the next couple minutes, we're going to be talking about how to future-proof your company by effectively scaling engineering teams. And I hope that no matter what stage you are in your career, you'll be able to take away something from this. If you're a manager, great. If you are a junior on a team, I hope you can take this presentation and be like, hey, I think this is something that will really help us grow and help me grow as an engineer. My name is Jennifer Wadella. You can follow me on Twitter at @OMG@Sveti. I do warn people that The Bachelor is in season, and I am known for live tweeting it, so follow at your own risk. But I'm the director of Angular development at Bitovi. We are a consulting company, so I see a whole lot of teams struggling with scaling their engineering teams, trying to figure out how to get people to be better Angular developers, and so that's a lot of the content of the talk today. I'm an Angular GDE, and I am also a panelist on the Angular Plus show, so we'd love to have you subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform to come along with us on our adventures where we talk about Angular, plus a lot of other things. And if you've seen talks from me before, you may be like, whoa, Jennifer, is it even legal for you to not talk about forms at ng-conf? But as my GitHub profile now shows, I did write code and then I became a manager, sad face. Just kidding, I love what I do. I love helping engineers grow. It's really, really fulfilling and really, really amazing. So I hope I can help some of you do all that here today. So I've got a couple goals for this talk that we're going to try and get through, and this is a lot of content, I know. But number one is I want to help companies survive what I call the senior hire frenzy. I also want to help you learn to quickly spot skill gaps in your existing team, because we can't figure out how to grow if we don't know where we need to grow to and where we need to grow from. And I want to help you create a growth environment that's going to be sustainable. And with these goals, I want to help you do this without overloading the few senior Angular engineers you may have, because this is a trap I see a lot of companies falling into. Okay, so let's talk about this senior hire frenzy, because all we hear all the time, oh, we're only hiring senior Angular engineers. Oh, this is all we want. This is all we can take on right now. But the current hiring landscape is not necessarily going to support this. This is a memo that leaked a couple years ago from Facebook's internal recruiters. And when we talk about the kind of companies that engineers want to work for, like FAANG companies are kind of at the top of the list. And if you've got a company like Facebook who isn't even able to meet their hiring goals because their offers are getting turned down, where does that leave the rest of the companies who are also fighting for this very same engineering talent? And where are these senior Angular developers? Like, where did they go? Well, nice, they're in this room, they're in this room. But this is something that happens. They might have jumped to the hottest new JavaScript framework because clearly they weren't at the keynote yesterday to see the amazing things that Angular has coming in the pipeline. They may have pulled a me. Gone into the management pool, or they may have gone into this camp where they are now doing independent consulting and training, and they are doing that for a very, very high dollar. And I say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek. And the thing is, just because you're willing to pay senior salaries does not mean you're going to be able to get senior talent. You know, the definition of senior changes from company to company. We have all these different titles, and they may not meet what you need for your team. In some places, somebody who's been writing code for 3 to 4 years is senior. And in reality, engineers can get away for a pretty long time at a company with writing actually very little code. I remember when I was a baby developer and I got brought into an interview process and was interviewing people with 10 years more of experience on their resume than me, and I was very intimidated. And then I would start asking a couple questions, and I was like, oh, honey, like, do you write code? And not in a condescending way, but in a just surprised me that they had worked as a developer but weren't able to, you know, answer some very basic problem-solving questions, talking about even what they had done. And this trend, this is going to continue just as long as frantic hiring continues. You know, a couple years ago, 18 months was an average for being at a firm for an extended period of time. Like that was a big deal. And we're seeing people job hopping a lot more often now. And senior, this means something different everywhere. I've interviewed a lot of Angular applicants that, yeah, they've built applications in Angular, but they really can't tell me anything about how their code works or why they made those decisions. And this is something to be concerned about. So every year, Stack Overflow does their annual developer survey, and not that this is, completely accurate, but I feel like it is a good barometer for getting an understanding of where people are in the industry. And so if we're looking at ICs at individual contributors, there are a lot of people in the 1 to 4 years of experience camp and the 5 to 9 years experience camp. And so these are people who are, applying for jobs, they're writing code as their J job, and that's how long they've been in the industry, and that may not even be within their specific discipline. It doesn't mean they've been writing Angular for that many years. This is a new question they added this year to the survey, daily time spent searching for answers and solutions. A lot of people are spending a lot of their day trying to Google, how do I do this in Angular? How do I do that in Angular? Although I'd really like to see this graph against a couple of years ago, because the Angular team has gotten so much better at error handling that I feel like we have to do a lot less of this Googling. But still interesting to consider when we are looking at the current state of engineers and how much time they are going out there doing knowledge discovery. So again, I want to reiterate, entering the senior hiring frenzy, saying, hey, we're only going to look for senior engineers, that's all we can take on, is not necessarily going to get you the results that you're hoping for. I would like to encourage you to consider opening the door to hire more junior candidates. We've got boot camps that are pushing out great grads. They are so excited, they are so passionate, and they really want to learn. And throughout my experience interviewing people, the number of times I have taken a risk and hired a really passionate junior candidate who has answered one of my RxJS questions with, I have not done that, I know about it, I haven't had the time to go research how to do it yet, versus trying to kind of BS through my answer, that candidate has always been exceptional and become one of my best engineers. So I would really like people to talk to their managers. Managers have this idea of, hey, let's build our community. Let's take what we've gotten from our Angular community, let's give back. Let's start to grow our next generation of engineers. And hiring junior candidates is a really great way to do that. And on the practical side of things, I've dealt with a lot of senior Angular engineers who don't have a whole lot more knowledge than a junior candidate and are getting paid a senior engineering salary. So we do live in a capitalist society. If you're trying to fight this fight at work, throwing numbers around can help you out a lot. So my key takeaway is, don't think that you are going to be able to hire to meet your needs to get what your company needs shipped out the door. You're going to have to get creative. You're going to have to embrace other solutions. All right, and so that brings us into our next two goals that I want to kind of help walk you through how to do this. How do we spread this knowledge? How do we build the team that we want to build without being able to hire for it? So number one is you need to be able to assess where your team's at. You need to be able to spot skill gaps quickly. And I feel like everybody is stretched really, really thin. There's a lot going on, and so I'm very empathetic to what a lot of managers and teams are dealing with that in regard. So I want to kind of give you some easy ways that you can put disciplines in place to get better about this. So number one, fix your project management, please. You really can't tell how productive engineers are until you have good project management in place. And I feel like there's this love-hate relationship between developers and project managers, where a lot of developers are just like, oh, project managers are here to ruin my life. But have you ever worked with a really good project manager, and then you get to spend your time on actual engineering instead of answering silly questions or spending and wasting time in meetings? It's amazing. So we cannot understand how productive our engineers actually are without good project management in place to kind of see velocity, see how we're doing. The next thing I want to say is you need to have an onboarding system. This is something in consulting, I'll walk into companies a lot of times, and we're consultants, so we're used to onboarding ourselves, but we see the pain that happens when they try and onboard new engineers. And the same questions get asked, and a lot of time gets wasted. So I kind of have a checklist that you should start to think about if you're reviewing your own onboarding process or saying, ooh, yikes, we don't have an onboarding process. Your engineers, can they tell anybody what the vision of the product that they're building is? Do they know who the users are? Do they know why technical decisions are even made? These are kind of base points to establish because we build better software when we understand who we're building that software for. How quickly should somebody be able to set up in their environment? Again, like everything is just plugging how amazing Angular is, because I remember my AngularJS days when Webpack was coming out and trying to get that set up was a bit of a monstrosity. So this has gotten a lot better for us, but it is reasonable to have expectations of what should environment setup look like. How quickly is a developer going to be able to come onto the team and be productive? And environment setup is a big part of that. Okay, let's say they get a ticket, they are ready to start working. Do they know how to get from point A to point B of getting assigned work and then actually figuring out how to get that code deployed? Do you have a process? Is that process documented? Do people know where that documentation is? These are all great questions to be asking. And this is one that I really, really love because you can build some fun team culture about this. How quickly should someone be able to submit their first PR? We really pride ourselves when we help clients create a good onboarding process when somebody can get a PR open within a week, and we even get it up to 3 days a couple times. And this is something we celebrate with emojis and Slack, all sorts of things, because it helps bring people into the fold. It helps bring engineers in and feel like they're really contributing. I've seen companies that they might go 6 months before a developer ever opens a PR. So creating an onboarding system can help you get your people more productive more quickly. You also really need to promote and encourage question asking. Building a culture where it's safe to ask questions means you can understand where people's knowledge gaps are at faster. I had a client hire a couple senior Angular engineers in a very short amount of time. And then pretty early on in the project, one of those senior Angular engineers asked me, hey, why should I use ng-container? And this is not something that is an inappropriate question to ask, but at that level, I was able to clock this engineer and be like, oh, okay, if they're asking me this question, I need to make sure to educate them a little bit, so in their role, they're going to be able to educate other people properly. It was very quick for me to assess where they were in their knowledge. And so when you have that understanding of where people are, then you can begin to figure out where you need to coach them to. One of the other tips I have, and this really comes into play when you do not have enough time in the world and your lead developers don't have enough time in the world. Use your PRs for merging more than just code. Work in progress PRs are key. Getting people into the habit of opening PRs, committing work as often as possible is really, really great. You want to get them committing code at least at the end of the day, but you're going to be able to spot code quality issues faster. You're going to be able to find opportunities to facilitate pair programming more easily. And the big thing here is do not wait for a PR to be submitted, like fully, to start coaching, because by then it's too late. They've already gone down a pathway. They might have sunk a lot of time into this. If you had gotten an insight into what they were working on earlier, you would have been able to spot things and kind of work with them to get it following your team style guides or following these best practices. One of the other things I love about PRs is we can use them for just more than merging code. We use PRs as documentation a lot. When you're trying to teach advanced concepts to engineers, RxJS, it's a beast, y'all. We've heard that this whole time, and we've been saying that for years. And sometimes one of the best ways to teach RxJS is to take somebody's code that they've already written and start to reactify it. And so when you do this in a PR, you have kind of this self-documenting history, and you can bookmark that PR and use it as a coaching mechanism in the future. So you're not having to create training, you're not having to create documentation. You're able to have real conversations with your engineers, something tangible, business logic they understand, and teach from there, and then reuse it down the line. These are great for coaching mechanisms. If you find yourself going through a PR and you're needing more than 5 comments, that might be a sign to say, hey, let's jump into a conversation. Let's pair through this. Let's discuss these issues to make sure that we're all on the same page and learning together. All right, so threw a lot at you, and if you do not have a PR process at your company, I would very much encourage you to do so. If you're on TFS, I'm sorry. Tell your manager to come talk to me. I'll help you fight that fight. I have had a lot of people who are still in environments like that, but PRs, great for more than just merging code. They are great teaching tools that save you time and your lead engineers time. All right, so now that we kind of understand where our engineers at, we can have an insight into who needs to grow where and what they're doing. We can work on creating a growth environment. And these are really critical because we have this really bad habit when we are trying to get code out the door very, very quickly. that we throw it all in the hands of that one developer that knows the whole code base and they know the scary parts. And this is typically the most knowledgeable developer on the team. And because we're doing that, because we're using them as a crutch, we're not spreading that knowledge. We're not giving more junior team members exposure to the rest of the environment. And so we're going to get really short-term gains that are impossible to maintain long-term, typically lead that engineer to burnout and then quit. And then there's nobody who knows what's going on in the code base. So creating a growth environment is critical. You want to understand your team member limitations. This is going to craft your code-based practices. We have our preferred way of writing Angular at my company, and then we have our fewest amount of foot guns way of writing Angular at my company. And so depending on the level of the developers that we're working on, we might choose one of those two approaches and then work to slowly get to the preferred way to be building things. Your number one priority, though, especially in a manager role, is prioritizing knowledge spreading. And this means fighting some fights. This means going up against product. This means going up against business and saying, no, we will carve out time from feature delivery and pushing things out the door to make sure our team members have the space to grow their knowledge and share with each other without feeling crushed by deadlines. One of the ways you can do this, especially to encourage this at your engineering level, is to start to create KPIs or key performance indicators and make it a part of their job, not only to ship code, but to help contribute to onboarding documentation, to help with the PR review process, to create a team style guide. And while we're on the subject of documentation, Slack is not documentation. Once it goes past that scroll, y'all, it's gone. It no longer exists. So just because you answered something in Slack does not mean it is going to be findable or useful or anything representing, documentation. I also want you to think about setting up mentoring practices, and I've got two different kinds that I tend to talk about. Number one is passive mentoring. So these are easy activities like PR reviews or answering questions in Slack, something that you kind of do very passively as part of your workflow that you don't have to set up a bunch of energy to do. And then we have active mentoring, and this is going to be activities like leading knowledge sharing sessions or offering pair programming, things that are going to take a calendar invite to get going and that are going to take a little bit more effort. But both of these are very, very powerful mentoring practices to help scale and grow your engineering team. And the lead engineer does not always have to be the one involved. There is so much growth that we can do as a peer level, as a community, that just by two more junior people getting together and talking through ideas, their knowledge will start to go through the roof. So encouraging an environment that allows this to happen will get you there. One of the other things I really coach, especially my more junior people on, is see one, do one, teach one. So when somebody sees a concept or understands that and then does it, what I have them do is instead of another person asking me for that answer, I will say, hey, this engineer over here, they actually just figured this out the other day. Go ask them to show you how to do it. And so instead of the lead engineer having the responsibility of educating, they're helping one person along, and then that person helps the next person. And that person helps the next person. And all of a sudden, you have this culture where people are feeling comfortable teaching, feeling comfortable bringing the skill sets of their peers up. We really like learning sessions as well, and I feel like a lot of people are very, very intimidated by this idea of getting up and presenting on a topic in front of a group of people. But this can be really easy, low-hanging fruit. It can be 5 to 15 minutes, nothing super crazy, and you don't have to be an expert. Sometimes it's really valuable to just say, hey, you know what, we encountered this problem, this seems like a good solution, why don't you go research how to implement it? And so you're giving people critical thinking skills to go out and spend the time of really understanding a concept and then educating the rest of the team on it. So you don't have to have ready-made experts. You can do research and then present it back, just like we did in grade school or whatever. Really, really helpful for teams. And one of the best things you can do, again, at a manager level is solicit feedback from your team. Your team members might have really great ideas. They might notice gaps that you don't see because you're too busy managing. But what you do have the power to do as a manager is take their ideas and transform them into policy. And that's your power. That's what you can do to really, really help start and cement a growth environment. So in summary, senior talent bidding war is brutal. You're not going to win it, so I would encourage you to explore other options, hire junior talent, and really focus inward. Make sure that you have systems in place to spot skill gaps so you're aware of where your people are, where they're learning, where they're growing, where they're needing to grow. And prioritize facilitating growth and mentoring. It's hard work, This is really hard work. It requires dedication, vigilance, constant pushing. But this is really what makes great engineering teams that are self-sustaining. Because the cool thing about a lot of these processes, when you get them in place, is they're self-actualizing. It's like a snowball that starts rolling down a mountain. It picks up speed, and all of a sudden it's bigger and more beautiful than you could ever imagine. And that's one of the really great things about engineering management, is getting people in a position where they can achieve their engineering dreams and create a really positive, successful environment. If you have any questions, I would love to talk to you in the hallway track. I talk about this stuff all the time, and it's so great to be back in person instead of an online platform. But if you would like these slides, they are available at scalingengineeringteams.jenniferwadella.com. If you need to passive-aggressively drop this in a Slack somewhere at your company or ping it to a manager, that's totally fine. Yeah. If you need help with Angular or scaling teams or anything like that, my email is jennifer@bitovi.com. Thank you so much, you wonderful human beings.